This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details. Fan.
Tournament. The we being yours truly, Paul Allen, with producer Eric Nordquist, and on-site engineer Jared Wells is with us as Dante Culpepper walks through this breakfast area here at the Meadows. We, from the Meadows in Prior Lake through the Meadows of Life and all the news that cycles, 9 to noon, like a lot of people learned yesterday of the death of football immortality and former Viking Jim Marshall. The defensive game changer died at the age of 87. The cause of death has not been revealed, and he had reportedly a lengthy stint in the hospital. We are guessing many listening right now who followed Jim very closely during his illustrious playing career are quite shaken, and somebody who played with him is joining us now, one of our very favorites. It's HOF Radio. He's the greatest quarterback in the history of Minnesota Vikings football. Fran Tarkenton joins us now to chat about Jim Marshall and share some memories. Fran, it's Paul Allen. Thank you very much for taking time to join us.
I am. I'm happy to be with you. Jim Marshall came into our training camp at Bemidji, Minnesota, in the first year that the Vikings had a team, and that was 1961. Mm-hmm. It came there just 1 week before our opening game against the Bears. He was about 6'3", 210. He had gone through he's a defensive end.
Yeah.
And he had some really health problems at Cleveland, and we got him on a trade. And he played in that opening game against the Chicago Bears. He was a stalwart. He was unbelievable. He sacked, he tackled, he did everything. And we won the game. Biggest upset probably in the history of the National Football League, 37-13. Jim Marshall is the most important Viking ever.
Wow.
Why do I say that? Because he set the standard on the field. Bud Grant is Bud Grant. Never been anything like Bud Grant. But this is the player that came to us hurt, scarred, and he set the standard. He never missed a game in 18 years that he played with us. And he played in 4 Super Bowls during that time. He never missed a practice. He never said a harsh word to anybody else. He had no ego about him. He was a silent leader, great personality, played against the best players in the world, and always won.
Fran, go ahead.
I love Jim Marshall. I just think that Jim Marshall is the standard bearer for what a Minnesota Viking should be. And I hope the Will family will put the biggest statue of him to honor him, because he is the heart and soul of this franchise going back to 1961. And if you ever met Jim Marshall, you'll never forget him. I am sitting here shocked, hurt, celebrating his life, and just stunned that he's not going to live forever. But what will live forever is his soul and what he did and the standard that he kept. And you say, well, that's nonsense. These players today don't even know who Jim Marshall was. I'll bet you a lot of them do, and all of them should go back and find out who he was, because he was the greatest the greatest Viking of all time.
Well, Fran, you said a lot there, and that was eloquent, and it was beautiful. Because I know you care so deeply, not only about people, but about those with whom you played. And you and I have talked in the past about people who played in the 60s, 70s, and 80s staying in touch with each other. And, distance is never disdain, but sometimes people lose touch. But when you caught word that football immortality, your former teammate Jim Marshall, had died, how hard did that hit you?
Well, I'm 85 years old, as you know, and I work every day, and I'm in my office here in the middle of Atlanta. And when I got the word, I shut my door, I locked my door in my office, and I cried for an hour. I cried for an hour, and I relived my life with Jim Marshall. He and I at training camp at Bemidji, Minnesota, and the other places we trained. We played cards, and we played all kind of card games every night. I never beat Jim Marshall. Oh, I forgot to tell you. He's probably the smartest player I've ever played with. He had such talent. And I still celebrate his life this morning.
Amen.
As I did all yesterday, as I did all last night, because he's been an inspiration to me from the time he walked into that locker room at Bemidji, Minnesota in 1961.
Well, Fran, we've discussed this before, and many have brought it up, including yours truly, 9 to noon. The greatest quarterback in the history of Minnesota Vikings football, Hall of Famer Fran Tarkenton, starts our Wednesday presentation from the Meadows in Prior Lake. But elaborate on this if you can. He was eligible for the Hall of Fame starting in 1984, and at that time he held significant NFL record. So far passes him for consecutive games. 3 others have too. And Jason Taylor tied him for fumble recoveries at 29. But at the time he became eligible, he didn't get in. So why in the heck wouldn't they let him into the Hall of Fame?
They look at numbers. And somebody else had a few more sacks than he did. But it is the worst thing that's happened with the Hall of Fame not putting him in. I have written letters, I've done phone calls, I've done everything not everything, but a lot of things, and I'm going to go back and work on Jim Marshall being in the Hall of Fame. If he's not good enough to be in the Hall of Fame, there's no Hall of Fame. Nobody is. And it's a shame that he didn't have that honor while he was alive. And he and I talked about it so many times, and he really wanted to earn that. He'd already earned it, but he wanted to be recognized for that. So we cannot recognize him in his life, but we can certainly recognize him in his passing. And I'm going to work one more time.
Amen.
And then I'll go to work 2 more times. And I'll go to work 3 more times to do the justice for he and his family, even though he's gone from us.
That's beautiful. Beautiful.
He deserves to be in the Hall of Fame more than anybody that's ever been.
Amen to that, Fran. HOF Radio with Fran Tarkenton. He now, I mean, this just amazes me, Fran. Jim started 32 games. So the league goes from 17 to 32 games. In his 19th year, his 19th year as a rough and tumble defensive end playing in the trenches, protecting HOFs like you. And in his seasons 19 and 20, his final two, he started 32 games. He started every single game those final 2 years. How did he sustain the way he did?
He was, back in those days, we didn't have workouts in the off season. We didn't even have a weight room. We knew nothing about what you should eat, what you should not eat, right? And the players of this era have all of that we never had and never did. But it made no difference to him, it seemed. He played hard at practice. He played hard on every game. He loved what he did. And he always had a smile on his face. If you couldn't like Jim Marshall, you couldn't like anybody. But I go back again. This great franchise that started in 61, and there's been a great franchise, still a great franchise. We got great ownership today. And the ground side of that is Jim Marshall. And when Bud Grant came to coach us, not in 61, but he came in to coach when I was going to New York in 67. Mm-hmm. And the first guy he went to was Jim Marshall, because he knew he had to have the endorsement of Jim Marshall for this team to really embrace him. And he had the endorsement of Jim Marshall. Jim Marshall loved Bud Grant. Jim Marshall loved all the players he played with. And again, the standard that we're talking about just doesn't me talking after his death of one day. I talked about it from the time he walked on, and I think the first time he walked on was maybe in Bemidji, Minnesota.
Yeah.
And it's just hard to describe the guy. He played against some of the greatest tackles, and Jim Parker was a great big 300-pound tackle and great player. Forrest Gregg, big, great 270-pound tackle for the Green Bay Packers. Jim never weighed over 240 or 230, and he played against these guys, and he won. It was amazing. But he not only was this great teammate and great leader, he was a great player. He made Alan Page better. He made Carl Ella better. He made Benchwarmer Bob better. He made me better. He made everybody better.
Amen.
Never saw him chew out anybody, get in an argument with anybody. Never saw him do anything but have a smile on his face. And he loved the walk. I talked to him a few months ago, and his health was not good. And I said, Jim, how you doing? He said, gosh, I wish I could just tee it up for one more game. Put those pads on for one more game. And that's how he lived, and that's how he died. He was a Viking. He will always be a Viking. He was as great a friend, and, my friends were Grady Alderman and Mick Tingelhoff and Ahmad. And I could go on and on and on, and Jim and Alan, and what a franchise we have today.
Yeah.
And it's that franchise because of that era of player, of those guys that set the standard. And these teams now keep that standard and improve upon that standard. It's a great franchise. And that's saying that, and the Will family have been great owners for us. And they've been the greatest owners we've ever had. And I know the people of Minnesota and the fans of the Vikings respect that. And I sure do. And I'm grateful for that they've come in the last number of years and made our franchise better. They paid attention to Jim Marshall. They know what Jim Marshall did for our program.
I'm grateful for your friendship and the time that you always spend with the radio show. Time for a couple more here for HOF Fran Tarkenton. Now, when you went to the Giants, all right, so Fran played with Jim Marshall twice. When Jim got here his second year after playing with Jim Brown and Lenny Dawson and some others with the Cleveland Browns, Marshall came here 61, first year of Vikings football. Fran then was traded to the Giants, came back to the Vikings, played with Jim twice. Now, I think he had 3 or 4 games against the Vikings when you were with the Giants. But from what I understand, there was a specific game, maybe the first one you had against the Purple People Eaters featuring Jim Marshall when you played for the Giants. How did you and Jim interact during those games?
I went to New York. I went there not because I hated Minnesota. I was not in tune with the head coach of Minnesota at the time, and I could not play in Minnesota anymore. And so I demanded to be traded, and they traded me finally to the New York Giants. And the Giants had a record of 1 win, 12 losses, and 1 tie before I got there. We gave them 5 1 and 2 draft choices to get me. They did. I was as tall as both offensive tackles. They were 112-1 with Earl Morrall, who was a great quarterback for the Miami Dolphins when they had the undefeated season. He was the quarterback most of the year over Bob Greasy because Greasy got hurt. Wow. So I go there for this team, and then the first year we're playing the Vikings and opening game. And so I got, I called my own plays back then. And in New York, I put in the pass offense. So I helped our defense out to how to play against Jim Marshall, Carl Eller, and Alan Page was just a rookie that year. And, of course, you got to double them. You cannot block them with one man. But we end up in a situation where we're having a drive for the winning touchdown in Yankee Stadium. And I've been joined with Jim all game. And we're about on the 30-yard line. And I looked at him. I said, Jim, we're going to win this game. He called me the Cisco Kid, Francisco.
Yeah.
But he left it at Cisco. We're not going to let you get in that end zone. But we got in the end zone and we won the game.
Wow.
And he hugged me. And I hugged him because of who he was. And he and Alan and Carl and Lurchma and Gary Larson and those guys, they were the greatest defensive line of that era, easily, and he was the godfather of the group. He was the oldest of the group,
the captain,
and he was the leader of the group.
Francis, lastly, you were talking about great players of that era. All right, now defensive ends in the 70s. And they were all trying to run down Fran, but Fran ran away from them or threw over them. Thus, he's HOF. But defensive ends in the 70s, man, Carl Eller statistically is the best. But how did, say, Jack Youngblood, Too Tall Jones, maybe L.C. Greenwood, how did they stack up with Jim Marshall?
It was you could not win in the National Football League back then if you didn't have 2, 3, or 4 great defensive linemen. Merlin Olsen, and he goes on, and you mentioned, and Bob Lilly the Pittsburgh Steelers. They had a great defensive line. The L.A. Rams, and all the teams that made, and the Cowboys. If you didn't have great defensive linemen like we've talked about, you did not win. And today you're lucky to have one defensive lineman that can get to the passer. Back then, those teams and our teams had 3 or 4 who could go rush the passer or stop the run. And what we recognized, quarterbacks are not the most important players in football. We don't win games. The people, who wins games? The people that have the defensive line that can get to the passer and stop the run, and the offensive line that can protect the passer. And our offensive line, we had Tingelhoff, we had Grady Alderman, we had Ron Yeri, a great offensive line that didn't get the credit that our Purple People Eaters got. But without them, we don't win. And I don't care what the quarterback is, you don't win unless you win the line of scrimmage on defense and offense.
You're so right. I mean, even underrated players like Dyron Talbert and Ron McDowell for the Redskins, and Randy White with Dallas. We mentioned the biggest, most popular names, Mean Joe Green, too. There were just so many, Frank. There were so many. There were so many great ones.
And it wasn't just one lineman, two teams. The Pittsburgh Steelers had 4 All-Pros. Cowboys
so did you.
Did too. The L.A. Rams, too.
Fran, you're the absolute best, man. I know you're troubled by this and hurting with this. As usual, thank you very much for making time for the listening audience up here and to 9 to noon. God bless you and your family, my friend, and we'll stay in touch, all right?
Thank you. Skol Vikings.
Yes, sir. See you later. That's HOF Radio. That's Fran the Man on the Fan. We are mourning the death and celebrating the memory of Jim Marshall. He's Minnesota Vikings immortality, all right? His number 70 is retired. He's in the Ring of Honor. And he played 61 to 79 with the Minnesota Vikings. And he was with the team from the first year of the franchise, 1961, all the way through 1979. And his rookie year out of Ohio State, he played with Cleveland, as we mentioned, and he got to play with Jim Brown and Len Dawson. I mean, the stories Jim Brown would tell about football immortality and his time in the league are that of legend. It's an honor to be able to chat about Jim Marshall, and we will continue to do so around the corner on KFAN.
And
we go from the greatest quarterback in the history of Minnesota Vikings football, Fran Tarkenton, to certainly one of the greatest in the history of the team, and somebody in 2004 who was a Peyton Manning immortality-like season away from winning Most Valuable Player. Can we get a witness and a raucous round of applause as John Randall bangs on glass celebrating Dante Culpepper. Dante Culpepper has joined us here at the Meadows, and it's great to see you, man. Are things well with you?
Glad to be here, man. Hey, I can't complain at all.
I mean, sure you could. You just choose not to.
Well,
you know what I mean?
That's true.
Which is a great outlook on life, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now, I mean, the shoulders are still big. The arms still have a lot of juice in them. But with a golf club.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah,
I'm imagining when you get out there, what is it, about 375 straight down the fairway?
in my dreams, I wish. I hit it good though.
Right.
I hit it good.
We started the radio show. Not surprisingly, we're going to continue celebrating the memory of Jim Marshall. And, you came to the team 99, right? 10th
Yes.
overall pick, 99, Central
Yes.
Florida, NFC title game in 2000. I mean, Dante was there with a lot of great memories, man. So you're well after Jim Marshall, but being tied to the Vikings the way you are, being around the facility, including recently, as much as you are, Jim Marshall, what do you know about him? What do you remember about him? And did you get a chance to meet him?
Yes, I definitely was fortunate to meet him, and he spent some time around the facility when I was there. Mm-hmm. He wasn't a rah-rah. He didn't say a lot, but when he said something, it had a lot of weight. And that's what I remember about him. And he had a smooth demeanor. He was always positive. When everything seemed to be negative around us, he was one of those guys that would give us some much needed confidence, those confidence talks and stuff like that. I remember that about him, and I just my heart goes out to his family and everybody who knew him, because I know he touched a lot of people in positive ways. So I appreciate to be able to say I have met him and have some good conversations with him.
Amen, Dante. And this guy, when you just said that about no matter how things were, there always are people in highly competitive businesses, games, or whatever. You come across those people. And even though he wasn't a defensive end, you know who that reminded me of? Corey Chavis.
Oh, see,
when you played with Corey Chavis, and that's when I was getting to know Corey Chavis, Dwayne Bates. I mean, they were really good friends from South Carolina. Heck of a basketball player, too, Dwayne Bates. Holy cow. I think I saw him dunk on Randy Moss at Burnsville High School in some celebrity game. Remember that?
Yeah, he's a hooper.
Right. But Chavis was like that, where he's so smart and so kind, but when everybody was down, Corey was the kind of guy who would, lift people up, right?
Oh, absolutely. Corey Chavis was definitely one of the most positive guys I've ever been around, and even more than that, one of the most knowledgeable guys about sports and just about life. And he just had a lot of knowledge and a lot of love in him, man.
Right.
One of my favorite guys I played with, definitely.
Now, Dante, you were at Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center, I believe, yesterday, right? Was it recently?
Yeah. What you mean?
The facility.
Yes.
Right. J.J. McCarthy. You got Sam Howell. You got Brett Rippon, but J.J. McCarthy, he's just turned 22 years of age, man. I mean, like if and or when you talk to J.J. about what's coming at him, because, you guys were drafted basically same spot, and then 99, 2000, when you really went full throttle, you go to the NFC title game. You had a lot coming at you immediately right out of the gate.
Oh, yeah.
Well, he's going to face that, too.
Definitely.
So like, what did you tell him, or what can you tell him?
Well, I spoke with him a little bit. I just told him, hey, do what you've been doing. Because I watched him in college.
Yeah.
I love his demeanor. I love how he approaches the game. He loves the game. And I told him just continue to do what he's doing and lose yourself in this playbook, lose yourself in the process of getting better every day.
Yeah.
That's what I tell him, and he's doing that already. Yesterday, I was excited to see the zip he had on the football. A lot of people are going to be surprised. Yeah, I think the guys that see him a lot won't be surprised. I won't be surprised, but he's gonna light it up this year. I really feel like.
So you mean because I saw it at organized team activities last Friday, and we've seen it before. I mean, you were unbelievable at this. Say right hash mark left sideline, left hash mark right boundary. Not every like Kirk Cousins was really good at that. Not every quarterback is really good and really accurate with that, and some are flat afraid to do it because they think it's going to float. They're going to get picked. It's going to go the other way. I mean, those are gifts from God, right? It's the strength, the confidence,
his confidence,
and just working, right?
His confidence is there because he's putting the work in.
Yeah,
his confidence is there, and he has a strong arm. I don't think he gets the credit for he threw some dimes yesterday that was just magnificent, man. I'm telling you, he was putting it on the money. He has a lot of zip on his ball.
Yeah.
And I told him after practice, I said, man, you look electric out there. Just keep that going, keep that energy, and try to approach it every day like that. And I think he will, and I'm excited about it.
Well, now Justin, as in Jefferson, not as tall or not as big as Randy. Doesn't run down the field putting his hand up, thinking he's open every play like every receiver.
So, Jordan.
But nevertheless, when you watch Justin, Jefferson, what Moss characteristics do you see in him?
Just his playmaking ability and his confidence in himself and knowing who he is and what it takes to be great. I see that in him. He has it. But he just has that knack to make that play. When there's a forward opportunity to make the play, he's a guy that usually makes his play.
Right.
That's really what it comes down to. And he got the swagger to do it, man. I like to see it, man. I love to see it.
Not to bring the whole thing down here, but I've never asked you this question, and you were very, when I started calling games in 2002, and here we are in 2025. You were always really kind to me, and you and I had a really good relationship. So I feel comfortable asking you this, man, because I felt really bad for you in 2005. Well, we're in Charlotte, and Chris Gamble gets you low. Well, and that changed everything. It just changed everything for the trajectory of your life. So not trying to bring anybody down or anything, but what was that like? I mean, what was that time of your life like?
I mean, it was my first time having a serious injury, and I don't wish that on anybody. It was definitely a difficult time. But you live through it and you keep pushing, man. It was a very tough. I never got myself physically back to where I was before the injury. I was able to play some more, but I never was able to be myself in the pocket like I wanted to, and that's just a part of it, But I'm thankful for that journey as well.
Amen.
I'm not complaining. I wouldn't complain about it. I wouldn't wish it on anybody, and it was a tough time, but hey, I still had some good memories, and I learned a lot about myself. I learned that you got to think of other things in life. So that's kind of what it went to, and I don't shy away from it. I'm happy that
good for you.
It's an experience that I had, and anybody who goes through it, I could give them some insight on it as well.
Yeah, good for you. Last one. It's so different now in the NFL, man. I mean, we're talking about Jim Marshall, part of the Purple People Eaters. I mean, the Steelers had the steel curtain. There was a quarterback for the Raiders, God rest his soul, named Kenny the Snake Stabler. There were nicknames. You know what I'm saying? I gave Harrison Smith in 2012 a nickname, Harry the Hitman, because that's what he was doing, just blowing people up.
Yeah.
But, there aren't nicknames anymore because it doesn't tie with the marketing branding and Twitter and TikTok and Instagram and all that. So, Patrick Mahomes doesn't even have a huge nickname. Are you kidding me? And what I'm getting at here is there was a nickname of a time of Vikings football that I don't necessarily know how well it would go over now, and quite honestly couldn't care less. But it was 04, I believe, Afros. America's finest receivers on Sunday,
yes, sir.
Given by Kelly Campbell.
Yep.
And then you guys had a Saturday playoff game,
Yeah.
and America's finest receivers on Saturday.
Yeah.
But the beauty of it is that Chavis, Jermaine Wiggins, maybe you, Kelly Campbell, Moss, Nate Burleson, they started growing their hair out in November. Knowing that you...
It was
so
great.
those afros coming out of the helmets, man, it was
great.
unbelievable.
It was great, man. It was a great time.
Yeah,
it was awesome, and it was something everybody could get behind and just kept us positive and motivated.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
It kept things loose.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
God bless you, man.
Hey, same
I appreciate you, and thank you very much for the time all the time.
Always.
Dante Culpepper, one of the great quarterbacks in the history of Minnesota Vikings football. When we return, Mike Florio, ProFootballTalk.com, joins 9 to noon from the Meadows. We're in Prior Lake for a big Minnesota Vikings charity golf tournament today. And, it's serendipitous. I guess it is a positive generated out of a negative that 9 to noon is at an event like this a day after football immortality dies. Jim Marshall, who played 61-79 with the Minnesota Vikings, he's Fran Tarkenton joined the 9 to noon show, and right out of the gate, I introduced Fran, and then Fran became Fran. He just started sharing, just opened a vein and started sharing about Jim Marshall, and he said something that's going to resonate with me for a long time, because Fran doesn't bloviate, but Fran tells it like it is, positively or negatively. And, he played with and or against Jim Marshall. And he called Jim Marshall the most important and significant player in the history of Minnesota Vikings football.
Yeah.
And the way he laid it out is podcast worthy, if you missed it. So check that podcast after the radio show. It was right out of the gate, probably about 9:02, 9:03 when Kara and Fran hooked up, and then Fran got on the radio, and that jump-started the memory sharing, and the rhapsodizing of the football career and the life of Jim Marshall, who died at the age of 87. The cause of death has not been revealed, and he had a lengthy stint in the hospital. We know there are many listening right now who are shaken by this news, because when I come across a lot of old-school Minnesota Vikings fans who were there for the Purple People Eaters, Paul Krause with all the interceptions, and HOF and Fran Tarkenton, play action off Chuck Foreman, throwing deep to Ahmad Rashad or Sammy White or Stu Voigt, the tight end. There are just a lot of people who I know Jim Marshall meant a lot to them, and those who donned the Marshall number 70 jersey, since retired by the Vikings, those who met the quiet, gentle giant at appearances or events. Jim Marshall personified a Minnesota Viking with his longevity and his work ethic and his class. And the majority of the show today will celebrate his memory, including with Mike Florio next. Mike Florio, PFT, ProFootballTalk.com. Welcome back to the Meadows. We're in Prior Lake for a Minnesota Vikings Golf Tournament, and features a lot of alumni who, and many are discussing the bad news yesterday of the death of Jim Marshall. Fran Tarkenton told some unbelievably good stories to start 9 to noon. Great chatting with Dante Culpepper last segment, and now it's Mike Florio, who vividly remembers the Purple People Eaters, Jim Marshall, and the Minnesota Vikings of the 70s. I mean, he's mentioned it a million times, 9 to noon, and he joins us now. When you heard of the death of Jim Marshall, Mike, how did it hit you?
It hit me harder than I thought it would, and I'm not sure why. The Purple People Eaters, Alan Page, Carl Eller, Jim Marshall, the three main pieces of that group, they were mythical figures, I think, for those of us who discovered football back in the 70s. The main indoctrination tool for the NFL back then was NFL Films, and they used it very wisely to get young people like me to believe that football was larger than life. And people wonder today why I'm so hard on the league office about various things. Well, they created a standard for a kid like me back in 1973, 1974 that I expect them to live up to now. And And guys like Jim Marshall were just transcendent. They were gods among men. And like Jim Marshall was remembered by Fran Tarkenton in the video he posted today, Fran said, I didn't think he would ever die. And I can understand that, because from an outsider's perspective, when you see these guys who seemed indestructible, Jim Marshall playing until just before his 42nd birthday in 1979, 270 straight games, the longest streak of starts in NFL history for anyone other than Brett Favre. It really is amazing when you consider how brutal and violent the game was at the time, how the players hated their opponents far more than they do now, where players move around from team to team. And I know free agency is good for the game. I know fantasy football is good for the game, but it's changed what the game was back in the 70s and the 80s when guys were on the same team their entire careers. And yes, they weren't paid nearly close to what they deserve. And yes, it was a game that had very little regard for the health and safety of the men who played it, but it just had a different feel. And for Marshall to do what he did in that era from 1961 to 1979, playing every game, as Fran said, never missing a game, never missing a practice, always there for the team, greatest leader that Fran Tarkenton had ever experienced in all his years in football. It's the turning of a page, and it's a reminder of a time in football that is never coming back. For better or worse, it's a reminder of an era in football that is gone forever.
Very, very beautifully stated. And Fran Tarkenton, I didn't see that post you're talking about, but about a half hour ago on this radio show, and Fran doesn't bloviate. You know, Fran can be loquacious and loud, but he doesn't bloviate. And he said Jim Marshall is the most important and significant player in the history of Minnesota Vikings football, and he laid out why. And it had a lot to do with work ethic and leadership and reliability and dedication and loyalty. And then you get to those final 2 years, you know, playing 20 years, 19 for the Vikings, including the first year of the team, 61. But his final 2 years, when they went to the 16-game schedule, he started every game. And that wasn't the NASCAR package era. I mean, they weren't rotating en masse the way they are now. So he's probably playing almost every play. Think about it. That's amazing in years 19, 20, right?
Oh, it's unbelievable. I had either not known or forgotten that he was in his 40s when he finally retired, but it's one of those things where you sit down and think about it. Well, how in the hell would he not be in his 40s unless he started playing when he was 15? And he actually came out of Ohio State a year early and went to the CFL because he literally needed money. He had no money. Wow. He had to go play. Remember, they used to call it a hardship case back in the 70s. You couldn't just leave college. You had to put in your full time. He left and couldn't even go to the NFL at that point. He had to spend a year in Canada before he was drafted by the Browns, and then he was part of a multiplayer trade package to the Vikings at the time the franchise was getting started. The Browns had no idea who they were moving on from when they did that. And I can understand why Fran believes it. He's one of those guys who, even in an age where there was no social media, there was no internet, there was no way for guys to grab the spotlight and put it on them, he never sought it out. It never landed on him naturally. He just went about his business each and every day, quietly and humbly, and it was a great example to set for everyone else. And two of his teammates made it to the Hall of Fame on that defensive line, Eller and Page. Fran made it. Others arguably should make it. Paul Krause is in there. I don't know why Jim Marshall isn't. I've never done a deep dive into why he isn't. I've just looked at it and I shrugged, because I think that body in Canton is so deeply flawed. It just doesn't surprise me that there are examples of guys who aren't in who should be in. It's like, well, that's par for the course, because they put people in who shouldn't be in. They miss guys who should be in. It doesn't surprise me, because it just feels like the ultimate make it up as they go along group that has more than a few mistakes that they've made over the years. Well, two things here. First and foremost, in chatting with people who knew Jim better than me and HOF Fran Tarkenton, I mean, it seems like Jim was just, it was circumstantial. It's, Carl Eller's in, Alan Page is in, he was part of that line, and the voters felt like we can't put too many in, they're not winning the Super Bowl or whatever. And secondly, correct me if I'm wrong here, but haven't there been times, Mike,
where, I mean, you've gotten loud about Jim Marshall not being in the Hall of Fame, where you've kind of stumped for him a little bit. Is that true?
I might have. I don't know. I've been doing this so damn long, I can't remember what I've said when I've said it. I know I've pushed for Chuck Foreman to be in it. Frankly, as much as I love Chuck, Jim Marshall deserves it more than Chuck does.
Amen. This is Mike Florio, ProFootballTalk.com. Don't forget about his books, Father and Son of Mine. Learn more at ProFootballTalk.com. The Purple People Eaters. This, I just had Dante Culpepper on the radio show from this golf tournament, and you know, he played in a time with Randy Moss, the Super Freak, and then before that, Purple People Eaters and Steel Curtain and Kenny the Snake Stabler and all that kind of stuff. That there are no nicknames anymore, and you know, it doesn't bug me like it used to, and I understand there's a marketing and a branding side that's tied with it because of social media, but is that the reason why there just aren't nicknames anymore, cool nicknames like Purple People Eaters?
I think they have to happen organically in order to work, and they need to fit, and you just know it when you see it. The fearsome foursome, the doomsday defense, the killer bees, the Purple People Eaters. Also, there's a basic reality that free agency will break up solid units like that. You can't keep four guys together across the line of scrimmage. You're going to have to trade one of them in lieu of paying them because you can only pay so many of them back. And again, I'm not saying it's better. This is just the way it was.
Right.
Back in the 70s, you rarely had, especially on good teams, you rarely had guys leave because the teams wanted to keep the good teams together. So you had, for a sustained period of time, Eller and Marshall and Page, and at first it was Larson, and then it became Doug Sutherland. But the three core guys are always going to be there, and no one's got the ability to turn the tables on management and say, I want more, I want this, I want that, trade me, or I'll become a free agent. There were no levers for the players to get fair pay. So from that perspective, it's good that it's happened, but I think it makes it harder to have nicknames that stick from year to year because the great units get broken up by the realities of the business that ensures that guys get paid fairly for their skills and abilities.
Well, I mean, off everything you said the last 5 minutes, I mean, you just have my mind going right now. Like Harrison Smith, I mean, he's into his 14th year with the same team, and it's important to Harrison to finish his career with the Minnesota Vikings, so it could be at the end of this year. I don't have a Hall of Fame vote. I don't know if you do, but if I did, I would elevate players who push through all the luring and the things that can come with free agency for the dedication to one team and one fan base. Because just think about college sports, man. I mean, with the transfer portal, it's so difficult to fall in love with players as freshmen, and then for 3 years, football or basketball, you follow them. Same thing with the NFL because of free agency. And then you think of Harry the Hitman, Harrison Smith, 14 years in the same colors. That stuff's big, isn't it?
Well, it is, but look, this is a longer conversation about whether or not it's good or bad for players to stay with the same team, and a system that allows players to get paid fairly, I support fully, because we need to appreciate that these are the guys that we tune in to watch. These are the ones who are putting their lives on the line literally, and also shortening their lives or putting themselves in a position where later in life they won't have the same faculties that the rest of us do. And trust me, as I meet guys who played in the NFL who are my age, and I see that light isn't there, and I know why that light isn't there. Because, during the years that I was in my dorm or my apartment studying law and practicing law and not getting banged around repeatedly, they were. And there's a point where it catches up to you. So I struggle with that. And as it relates to the Hall of Fame, I don't have a vote. I don't want to vote. They don't want me to have a vote. I don't play the game. I say what I believe, and I've criticized the Hall of Fame over and over again. The bar is too low generally, and the problem is they let people in who shouldn't be in, and it's a big mess. And then they have a cleanup year where they'll put in 20 guys, which is ridiculous to me. And then how do you reconcile that with Jim Marshall not even getting to the 12 from whom the seniors committee candidate was picked a couple of years ago? He was one of the 31 under consideration. He didn't even get to the 12. that ultimately became I don't know who, and they've put some guys up in recent years. Like, this guy has no chance to get the votes. Like the guy that they put up, the owner who was back from the Hupmobile days and didn't believe in paying players at all, and that guy was one of the candidates again. Like, it's just, the whole thing is a mess. And the fact that Jim Marshall isn't in, when you look at, and I don't want to name names, but when you look at some of the guys who are in, the fact that Jim Marshall isn't in, it's just the whole body to me. It's undermined, and it's a museum in Ohio, and it has some value, but, you know, beyond the people that we know definitely get in without debate, without discussion, it gets very fuzzy, and they've made a lot of mistakes over the years, and Jim Marshall's omission is one of the most glaring.
We're going to make it a one-topic Wednesday. Thank you very much for the time. We appreciate your thoughts. I knew this hit you hard when I texted you yesterday. God bless you and your family, and we'll talk soon, okay?
Thank you, Paul.
Yep, see you, bud. That's Mike Florio, PFT, ProFootballTalk.com. Couple of minutes here before we play back a couple of interviews. Yours truly conducted here at the Meadows in Prior Lake with HOF Immortality Randall McDaniel. That's coming up soon, along with Stu Voigt, a former Vikings tight end who played with Jim Marshall. And, you know, Stu, as Nordo, the on-site producer, with J-Dub, Jared Wells, the on-site engineer, joined now. But with Nordo, you know, it's Stu Voigt, a tight end. What's going on, Grump? Grumpy Parrish, Mark Parrish. Who you like tonight, Florida or Edmonton? I like Florida tonight.
I think Florida's really, really good.
Really good, right?
I think Edmonton is going to give them a run, but I can see the first game when
Very nice.
Florida on the road.
Hit them straight and strong,
Grumpy.
Good seeing you.
Thanks, Parrish.
Mark Parrish from the Power Trip Morning Show. He's Hockey Immortality. All right, 3-2. Forgot what I was saying. Oh, yeah, here's what I want to say to you.
Stu Voigt, a tight end?
Yeah, I was just introducing what's coming up around the corner. It's a Kara Savage production. But I was thinking, because you weren't here last year when we did this first Vikings alumni or Vikings golf tournament at the Meadows. Ben Gessling was here doing the show. And, what I'm just going to lay it out like this, like I'm interviewing you, like it's Eric Nordquist joining 9 to noon, blah, 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 and good morning.
Thanks for having me.
Well, knowing your age, 40-ish, and the guest we had previous to Florio, Dante Culpepper was an accomplished high-end quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings during the very formative years of your football-loving life.
This is true.
So was there a little rube that came out in you when you saw him, a little fanboy, as they would say?
So 21-year-old Nordo was the home theater senior at Best Buy in Mankato, store 330. Mm-hmm. And one day during Vikings training camp, this gentleman comes in by the name of Dante Culpepper, and he is shopping for video games.
Yeah.
And I got the chance to shake his hand. And then now, I guess this would be nearly 20 years later, I get to shake his hand again. I listen. And
the word hand and Dante, when you were 21-year-old baby Nordo, I started 9 to noon full-time in I think it was 98, something like that. Started Vikings games in 02. But with Dante, it's kind of like what we hear now with certain offensive linemen. Arms are too short.
Right.
So then my
T-Rex in a phone booth. Yeah.
Right. My go-to is stop making this player sound like he's hanging out underneath a bridge like he's a troll hanging out with Billy Goat Gruff.
Right.
All right. He ain't that Minotaur. But Dante's hand size and being small.
It was a talker.
For a quarterback?
Yeah.
We both shook. His hands ain't small.
No, they're not.
Maybe comparatively speaking, they're not Nosferatu or Freddy Krueger-like.
Correct.
But when you say Dante and hands, I mean, that was such a stupid big talker for about a year when you were baby Nordo.
At this stage, it's not like I'm a huge... I don't go full rube on it as much when you get to interact with these people. Yeah. It's more or less you just kind of you soak in the moments as a hardcore fan that I was. I was full rube when I first met Dante down in Mankato. This was off the 04 season. Yeah. It's 05. What are we going to do this time? We got Randy mooning people at Lambeau.
Did you give him Madden 04?
I did not.
Best Buy. NBA 2K -10.
I pointed him in the right direction, no doubt about it. But there was a little bit of that moment as I'm thinking there's a lot going on here because we are celebrating the memory of and the impact of a Jim Marshall, not just his life, but you can feel it from those generations beyond him, even with Dante, those that interacted with him. We saw really the same, and in some ways to an even more significant extent, maybe when Bud passed away. And you just see, the building blocks of this franchise, and really the building blocks of the NFL, all stems from an era of the Purple People Eaters. It all stems from NFL films and the mythical nature in which these guys were promoted to the fan base in the 70s. That has kind of evolved into the fan base and the fandom that it is today. Yeah. But it was a very cool moment for me just to get to see Dante. I love Dante. Yeah. I don't know how anybody could see him other than an incredibly athletic, incredibly likable guy. Yeah. Certainly flawed and maybe never Canton bound, but just an absolute character with this team and somebody that I really rooted for. Of course, the injury changes it, and then you get to see over now the next 2 decades, you get to see Dante the man deal with the humility moment of the injury, how things are going to be different, and now you see him here. I mean, he knows they're golfing today. He just scrambles in there. How quick did Dante look trying to pick up a couple sleeves of balls before he heads out on the course?
And he's gone in and out of this door to the right of us 15 times. Yeah. Yet when he was rushing to his golf cart, he went to the wrong door and was surprised it was locked.
Yeah, the alarm will sound if you push that open, Dante.
Dante, you push that thing, the alarm's going to go off. It sounds like an alarm version of Reggie White, and it's going to come running at you very fast. God rest his soul.
Even without necessarily a nickname, but I mean, like, people had bits, like getting your roll on with Dante back in the day. Yeah. And you miss that kind of thing, but really in this moment, you're right. I mean, it's bad luck, it's bad circumstance as to what the frame of these conversations are with the passing of Jim Marshall. Yeah. But it's really fortunate for us to be here, where next segment listeners are going to get to hear from HOF Randall McDaniel, one of the great tight ends in franchise history, and a Stu Voigt, and who we've been able to see and interact with here. It's just special moments like this, and it's cool to see how much of an impact that Jim clearly had, not just on his former teammates, as you heard from Fran, but really multi-generationally, even some of the younger cats that are affiliated with the Purple.
I have not had time to run through this, like the, how are we going to put it, the Jim Marshall for Dummies, kids, those who are younger, who didn't watch him play or haven't taken time to read up on him, and ain't nobody mad at you about that. Right. Life comes at us fast. Life is fast, man. And, Jared Allen is going into the Hall of Fame, so you got a defensive end there that people are studying up on if they don't remember exactly what he did. But for some of the new schoolers, or really the middle schoolers, let me fly through this real quick, and then we'll pause, and we'll come back and hear from Randall McDaniel and Stu Voigt. Jim Marshall played in the NFL from 1960 to 1979. The first year of Minnesota Vikings football was 1961. The first training camp was at Bemidji. And, in fact, Pete Bursich's dad, Bob Bursich, was with the Dallas Cowboys, who also shared training camp part of the time with the Vikings in Bemidji. So I think that might have been the first preseason game, Bob Bursich versus Jim Marshall and Fran Tarkenton.
Would that have been Staubach days, potentially, in the 60s?
Yes, maybe.
Oh, my goodness.
Might have been. But Jim Marshall played from the first year of the franchise through 1979. His rookie year of 1960 out of Ohio State. I think this is so beautiful, man. He played with running back Jim Brown. All right? I mean, there are names that transcend and stand the test of time. Jim Brown's is one. Yeah. Quarterback Len Dawson, who also played for the Kansas City Chiefs, maybe not so much, but he also has football immortality. And with Minnesota, he had 127 sacks, did Jim Marshall. Second all-time to Hall of Famer Carl Eller's 30, and 13 clear of somebody we've seen multiple times today, HOF John Randall, who's third in the history of the purple and gold. Jim Marshall had 29 fumble recoveries, tied for most in NFL history with Jason Taylor, the former Dolphin, who also was in the Hall of Fame. Jim played 270 consecutive regular season starts, most by a defensive player and most by one player with a single team. He had 282 consecutive games he played, fourth most behind. It was for a long time it looked like a record nobody would ever break.
Yeah.
Non-kickers, non-punters, and kickers. 282 in a row, man.
Was it Favre that broke it, I believe?
He's fourth. Jim ended up being fourth behind non-kickers Brett Favre, 299. Bruce Matthews, Clay's dad, 292. And Jerry Rice, 284.
A lot of HOFs in that mix there.
It's all HOF, including Jason Taylor. And that's kind of a common thread here.
How is Jim not in?
You know what I'm saying? How's Jim not in?
He's got to be at the party.
It's ridiculous the more you think about it. Now, he also had what's known as the wrong way run. And most people know that from seeing, highlights via NFL films or whatever. It was in 1964. It was at San Francisco. He's playing for the Vikings, and he picks up a ball that's going to basically win the game. All he has to do is fall on it. The Vikings are going to win the game. Instead, he picked it up, and he ran the wrong way. And he kept going to the wrong 40, to the wrong 30, and he's loose inside the wrong 20. And he gets into the end zone. It's a safety for the San Francisco 49ers. And, I and others have chatted with Jim about this before. And I wouldn't even giggle when I talk to him about it. It's still, the last time I chatted with him, maybe 2-3 years ago, it still bugs Jim to this day that he did that.
Yeah.
But now the Vikings would still win that game in 64 against the Niners, 27-22.
Of course they would.
But when Jim got into the end zone, he tossed the ball away and started to celebrate.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, an offensive lineman named Bruce Bosley. Bosley or Bosley? Let's go with Bruce Bosley. Ran down to the end zone. He played for the 49ers, and he tapped Jim on the shoulder pad, one of his shoulder pads, and said, "Thank you, Jim."
Oh.
And Jim was like, "What happened?" And then the safety, Jerry Markbright or somebody, runs down, and he does the safety sign. Ooh. And Jim bent over, man, and he stayed in that spot with his hands on his knees for a good 45 seconds. He was so sad. But he also was part of the Purple People Eaters, which is football immortality. So that's kind of the
Iron Man streak, the plays, the group, the aura, far outweighs a singular play.
Big time.
Was certainly negative, but and they still won the freaking game. How about that?
27-22. We indeed are sharing memories and celebrating the life of a player, the greatest quarterback in the history of Minnesota Vikings football, Fran Tarkenton, an hour ago on this radio show called the most, not the greatest, the most important and significant player in the history of Minnesota Vikings football. And there was no bloviating to it. Fran was speaking from the heart. And you're going to hear Randall McDaniel and former tight end Stu Voigt speak from the heart around the corner. Our break from the Marshall memories include Big Shot Bob, Robert Ory. He won a 7-time NBA champion, Big Shot Bob. He joins about 10:45 to discuss the NBA Finals. He's followed by Minnesotan and host of Good Morning Football, Jamie Erdahl, shortly after 11 o'clock, talking about a very special version of Good Morning Football coming up Thursday and Friday. And we're going to start all that around the corner. Kara Savage produces from the 651 Carpets Plus Studios with Nordo and J-Dub. I'm Paul Allen. You're listening to KFAN.